You're watching Andrew Vega working. How's it going, Andrew? Oh my
Jesus
gosh,
Christ.
that is the wildest thing I've ever.
I mean, honestly,
Is that
that
I
healthy?
might
guess it
be
only filters on the way in.
a little different here tomorrow.
Work is work, you know. It is what
Yeah,
it is.
dude, you look bright yellow. You're like the birds in the morning.
Very safe, invisible.
Yep, high vis.
Yeah.
What's with
I
your
mean, I
apple?
knew this was gonna
Is
happen.
the
but
did you
it's
spray
something-
paint the apple on?
Oh no, that's a sticker from when I got my desktop or whatever.
No, they're not gonna take that from me.
Branding, it works, you know. It's mind control.
Mind control is good. If you're not in control of your own mind, someone else will be.
I kind of wish I had like a rainbow one.
Oh, I have a bunch of rainbow apples. I could almost grab it. It's over there. But I have a pile. Oh, I have tons of rainbow apples.
Back then?
Dude, I had rainbow apples for every computer. But then,
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
they-
you just stay in the loop. Let me know what happens.
Daniel, get your camera working. Daniel, let's so Daniel, what you're gonna do is you're gonna click on settings there. See the settings cog, and you're gonna go to the camera button, and you're gonna change your camera input from OBS to your actual input camera.
I don't know. I mean, he's gonna leave at some point today, so
Can you hear me? Daniel?
Sounds like he's on a
I'm
work
guessing
call or
like 10 or
something.
11, so he'll probably be here like.
I want to mute him.
That's hilarious. We should actually just record him just in case it's like something interesting he's saying. That'd be hilarious. All right,
I'll take it.
I'm gonna send him a message real quick. Hold on. It's telepathic message. I'm just like thinking about him, telling him I love him. Hopefully he gets that.
Oh, it's much louder over there.
Early birds, dude. I know it's late for some of you East Coast birds, but
Yeah, it's almost lunchtime.
Yeah, geez. I guess it's early birds for California.
I mean, especially for California where people get up at like noon every time. So how about we'll do a quick intro of Andrew explaining what you're up to today. What are you doing?
I'm we're refurbishing some walls at the it's a food grade oil refinery, and products made here are in 97% of all shelf products.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. I think they refined like 6 different kinds of organic oils for use in food, and the buildings are over 100 years old, and so we're replacing all the brick, either that's fallen out on its own or is about to.
Wow.
So you're
crazy.
using the hexane that they use to spray out seed oils. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Man.
they got these huge
Glad
silos.
to know they do that in a black mold-ridden facility.
Yeah, right. And this is where so when you're saying like the oils, you're not talking about like biodiesels, like hemp oils. You're talking like you said hexane, like a petroleum oil that they use in artificial flavors and in mac and cheese. Yellow
Hexane is
dye.
just a light petroleum. Petroleum is like whatever chain of carbon you got, or just a shorter one.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
like, go ahead.
soy, canola, corn, various other ones. Sometimes it smells real sweet in here. I haven't dialed in which oil that is, but you know they use a lot of liquid nitrogen and liquid hydrogen in their extraction processes, and then they actually turn the waxes that are a byproduct of the extraction into candles.
Wow.
Nice.
Interesting. That seems like kind of interesting because the amount of people always warned you about like hexane having effects like nervous system effects, right? Like, so that's interesting that that's in everything. But also, do you think that is there a reason why they let the building get to that level of?
This exact building, they're not doing oil extraction in this building, but this is like basically a steam house that runs to everything else because they also use like heat in the extraction process. Yeah, no, there's like a giant boiler room in the bottom, and they use steam to clean out the tankers that they fill up with the oil before it gets shipped out.
Well,
So they
all
got
right.
railroad tracks in here, and they have 18-wheelers pull in, and they'll move the oil in these huge tankers. I forget how many thousands. It's in the tens of thousands of gallons,
Wow.
and
Jesus.
yeah, and they'll just roll them out on the tracks or by highway.
This is like the most Mr. Rogers part of the morning. I'm really excited to be able to do like a live tour of a black mold cleanup and a bio oil facility. Also, John is in England right now, and I just saw the newest British alternative to MAGA. Do you guys know what the MP of Britain is calling their new campaign? It's make Britain vaguely civilized again.
How do
Have
you
you
pronounce that?
Make Britain vaguely civilized. What? The MP?
How do you
MBVC.
pronounce MBVC?
Oh yeah. I don't know how. I
Sounds
think
like
you just
that a
Well,
Roman
at least he's
numeral?
called it MAGA.
Venice Beach Dub Club.
Mbexa. Mbevetsa sounds like kind of almost Slavic Italian. Mbevetsa.
Or it sounds like a Jewish holiday or something.
It does. It does have that kind of, or like, a traveler's word that we haven't used before. I like the idea of making Britain vaguely civilized. I don't know exactly what that means, considering that Britain, invented etiquettes because of lack of civility, right? Like, it's kind of the coolest thing about England, right? You don't have plumbing at a certain point. You teach women to walk on a certain side of the street. Like Britain does stuff like that. There's all kinds of things where they could have, I mean, you end up knighting someone for infrastructure because infrastructure is not the first solution to things. It's etiquette every time. Britain loves, is that right? Do you agree, or is that a prejudice of mine?
No, yeah, you can get united for all sorts of things. It's basically anything is promoting the British Empire, in a positive way, obviously, in not a sort of like violent or destructive manner. So yeah.
I mean, they kind of talk about what it means to be British, and the MP's upset about like graffiti, Central England. I kind of look at graffiti as the people's art. I don't know if that's not elite enough for British civility, but what do you think about that? Right, the idea that is that true, or am I crazy? Like, what is prescriptive versus descriptive British culture, and what is civilization to you, particularly British civilization?
Graffiti's been allowed to. Well, they can't really control it, can they?
Right.
But it's sort of like a way of letting regular people express themselves, and so there are councils that will allow you to do graffiti, and I think you actually get paid for it. And in town I'm in, they actually have like street art, and any installation, whether it's like a phone for telephone systems or anything in the street is pretty much painted.
Right. So, but I mean, we should look at this some more. Look at this. This is beautiful. Yeah, early birds getting that work in. Okay. So, some of the plans though for Britain include action to stop phone boxes and street furniture from being covered in graffiti.
You guys still have phone boxes?
Yeah, a few.
Yeah,
We've got one in a museum in New York.
That's pretty cool. You also have the Banksy cut up one, but also action to stop e-bikes and scooters from being ridden on pavement. An end to streetcars where gaps in street paving are replaced with tarmac, and galvanizing national goal to reduce the amount of litter. Excuse me, litter.
Okay.
You guys eat a lot of that too, though, right?
All that litter in the streets, yeah.
Yeah. only
those street vendors selling those liver kebabs.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think
I just want to live.
The idea of removing graffiti and e-bikes and things like that seems kind of interesting because isn't England kind of how far? Okay, let me look at the economics of England. Like, what is the percentage of non-car owning, lower middle class
pedestrian English?
Yeah. Class English ratio population. I mean, it's a lot more than less, right? I think it is. So
I feel like there are more people in Europe who don't drive than in the United States, just because everything's so much closer together.
It looks like it's something like 61%. Is that right? 61%. I don't know exactly. I don't know if you'd know.
A lot more people on bicycles now than there used to be. There's a big push of allowing them more access, and so they will cycle through the town centre. And in London, it's quite a problem. I can't remember who talks about it the most. Maybe Jeremy Clarkson or something. It goes on about it, and how it's cost like hundreds of thousands of pounds to the council to just allow the bikes more access on the
Man,
on the
I got a
roads.
love-hate relationship with Jeremy. Mostly love. I have like literally just like a little bit of Argentinian nationalism is the only thing. Otherwise, dude, I kind of like the guy all the time. I'll admit.
This guy's Argentinian.
No, but there was a funny situation where he went to Argentina and he drove across the country with a license plate that referenced the Falkland Island War. Like it had like the year and everything on it, and like nearly got stoned to death.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, because it's like Vietnam and there's dudes without legs. But otherwise, Jeremy's amazing. Like he's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's got his own farm now, and that's created massive controversy because he's like, oh, you can't have your own farm; it will never take off, and it has because it's Jeremy Clarkson, and he's a celebrity. People go over and visit the farm, and I suppose you could sell eggs for like £100,000 or something.
Oh wow, what do you think?
Yeah.
So like, is it just because the novelty that he has a farm? It's not.
Yeah, that's it. Because he's so famous for being on Top Gear, and that was like the first. That I think whenever that started, that made like car hobbying, car mechanics, and it became really popular with car hobbyists. Like, and
that was years and years ago, right? Like in the 70s, the 60s when it started.
Well, yeah, I think they reinvented it. And had Jeremy Clarkson. Yeah.
But it's become an international phenomenon in like the 2010s on. I think it became a phenomenon that all over the world, in America, Canada, everywhere, that show became. It wasn't just British at that point, right?
Yeah. With the internet and stuff, everybody's like, look at these crazy Brits.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really took off.
Yeah. But British have always been really into the automotive industry. I feel like Aston Martin has been like a brand in England for 70 years or something like that.
Yeah.
What's left though, right? Because you have Jaguar, Rolls-Royce, aren't they owned by a British company now? I mean, sorry, an Indian company now, isn't that?
Yeah, well, it's all international conglomerate finance that owns the brand, but it's like where is the culture situated, really?
It's true. British culture definitely has, I think, undersung for its interest in technology, right? British.
Yeah, sorry, speaking of, I always thought it was incredibly interesting how the London Underground popped up like just mere years after stories of Harriet Tubman's Underground Railroad.
Right.
Like a very interesting game of telephone manifesting itself as public transit.
Totally.
They just misunderstood it, and then it just happened to be a good idea anyway.
I think there were definitely underground railroads, right? That's the Tartaria narrative, is that there's tons of examples of undergrounds all over the place that we didn't build, that were already there when they were discovered. In Ohio, Minnesota, Nevada, right? All over the place. But also in England. And the joke with England is the London Underground is, as indecipherable as, more indecipherable than the Rosetta Stone was or something. Like, it's just so impossible to know exactly which tunnel goes where, how many tunnels there are, what tunnels are below other tunnels that have been purposefully blocked paths, right? And there's New York, Sean, I don't need to put it like that, but there's all these underground abandoned train stations.
Oh
right?
Yeah, all over the place.
Oh yeah,
tunnels they just don't use anymore. Tunnels that they will use again in the future, but they haven't for like 30 years. Yeah, that's all over the place. The World Trade Center station was closed for many years after 9/11. I think for 20 years there was just no access in there, and they've only recently started using those tunnels again.
How crazy is this to have like the Ninja Turtles underground base, right? Like all of these places.
Get into that tunnel. I don't think is unused. The station itself is unused though. But if you stay on a certain train, you can get pictures inside of there when it passes through that area, but they won't let you off in there.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, like there's an entire city ready to go, and
Isn't the London Underground like much deeper in the ground though? Because I feel like they have like more bedrock or something like that, or a deeper water table. Like there was something about the London Underground that let it go a lot further under the land than Manhattan's.
I mean, also the drilling system, right? Because the London system is these concrete tubes, which are they can go deeper. You know, they go through they go through granite, stone, but they even go to levels where there's super condensation. So the water super condensation is an issue. So they have to have very strong tunnels, right?
Like the whole construction of it is different, which allows it to have a much bigger structure than I think the ones we have in America.
Like waterproof tubes.
Yeah. The land is so much older too, because the British Isles are part of the same mountain range as Appalachia.
Well, really? the Cambrian rock is in England, right?
I don't know.
Am I
Cambrian
correct about that?
Let's look it up.
John, is Cambrian?
I'm not sure. I've heard the word Cambrian.
Cambrian rock is stratosphere. Explain it to us. I don't know what I'm looking for. Cambrian period.
Yeah, the Cambrian, the rocks formed during the Cambrian would be Cambrian rock.
Yep,
and
found
it was found
in Wales.
Cambria. Yeah. So that's some of the oldest rock on Earth.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's got some of the first multicellular fossils that we know about.
Wow, so England's like ancient in a lot of ways.
Yeah, England's much older than most people realize.
Right.
Sure.
There's like civilizations that they've found in there. They're literally just a bunch of little towns that are dug into these ruts in the ground from like way older than Europe or Rome, and they were just like encampments of like 50 to 200 people all over England, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and it was just a bunch of people living their lives like nomads, like they were before or other to even the Vikings. There were just a bunch of Celts. Just
like 100,000 years ago or something. Skara Brae is one of them.
Yeah.
If you played Bard's Tale, that's like the town you start. Well, town. It is sort of town. It's the place you start in. It's like the central location in the Bard's Tale series of games. But Skara Brae is a real place. You can visit it, and I think it's like 100,000 years old. But it was a fully functioning little town. Stone Age.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in England way before what we would call history.
Yeah, and also when they're excavating underground tunnels, and sometimes they will find other tunnels and others. I wouldn't call it civilizations really, but they'll find other places that have already been tunneled. Older areas. I think in South America they found a whole bunch of them, and there's
crazy
like
tunnels.
Was it a tunnel de novo, or was it a cave system they extended? Because I know
that's
that was
it.
A lot.
It's sort of like a natural excavation. Well,
but they have amazing weird. They have amazing weird tubes too. So like the tunnels. Hey, look, Daniel did make it. Daniel, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel's an interesting character from Los Altos. The first time I met him, his home was covered in Russian Orthodox icons. I thought that was really cool. He also makes amazing music. I hope at some point he gets to share it with you. Dan, we're talking about the underground and the ancient London Cambrian rocks, as well as Andrew's in the process of removing black mold from a hexane bio oil plant immediately right now. So what are you up to today?
I am gonna be putting metal on my roof. I'm re-roofing right now.
Well, that's cool. Why are you doing metal? Is that a better roof, you think? You're not in like a lightning storm concerned place?
No, I'm in
that would actually help in a lightning storm. You want the electricity to go to the surface of the object you're inside of, not the inside of it.
Right. Is that your plan, or are you worried about fire, you said?
Yeah, fire safety and also just longevity.
Yeah.
You know what that's going to sound like when it rains, right?
It's for a machine shop. It's not my house.
Oh, okay, good.
Can imagine tap dancing in there, though, right? Well, okay, I wanted to bring up some more British stuff before I got off track, because I know that we were going to talk at some point about the rally and Tony's I thought rather funny set. But what about this? No aristocratic girl would have him. Why ruin her life? Prince William had to settle for a stalker, Kate Middleton. He needed to have kids so that what do you think about this? I mean, you're more British than me, John. How do you feel about this?
Oh yeah, I keep up to date on them. Very dodgy characters, and I think things are all going to pieces with them.
They look like they do a lot more cocaine than I've ever seen. You know what
I mean?
In my life, when I lived in Bolivia, so it's just crazy to see.
Yeah, so I reposted it originally for that picture of Kate Middleton because I could just imagine her captioning "fuck off."
Yeah, it looks like she's screaming at that kid at the Kamala rally. Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, that was over the line. Like even her own people were like, "Yo, chill out."
That was pretty. I mean, you know, it's. I don't know what lines exist anymore.
It doesn't even look like the same person though. She looks quite different, and there's quite a few conspiracy theories about her being replaced and her being murdered in December 2023.
Right. What do you think about that?
It's possible.
I think she just got sick. Like that was a pretty reasonable explanation to why she was out of the public eye and trying to edit her pictures.
She does look totally different though. You know, like
unless
she got so sick that they replaced her skin.
How crazy would it be to roll up a portrait of your mother-in-law to like snort drugs?
Yeah, right? That seems like a weird lifestyle in general, to have to use grandma's face anytime you want to do the cocaine that makes her look like that. But I don't know. I mean, it could easily be that she's somebody else. It's not that crazy to imagine that she's not playing the character, right? You get another person to play the character. I'm not saying I know that for a fact, but
well, they could
that's a popular theory.
Have somebody come ready for years in advance for that, you know, like
but like, is she? Do they need to replace her? Like she's already given him children. It's not like.
Well, it looked really weird when she just stopped wanting to be on TV, stopped wanting to be with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a good look.
And
then
she,
again, though, like,
she talks
I
totally
have
garbled
friends-
when she's in interviews and stuff. She
Say again?
I have two. Sorry.
She doesn't talk any sense when she's in interviews. She comes out all garbled. She starts saying something, then tries to go back to it to kind of correct herself, and then says something else, then goes back to it again and tries to repeat it, but she can't remember what she said.
Right. Well, they say that they're preparing for the death of King Charles, right? That's kind of the deal. Like, I mean, because he has a cancer battle right now. That's the story. So it's but it's interesting to do it like that, because now you know, okay, he's an old guy. Obviously, the king can't live forever. God save the queen. God save the king is turning into let's transition the royal family, right? It seems like that's the new slogan. And so we have a timeline for when that's supposed to happen, which is soon. And I think we said 2 to 6 years when Charles came in. It was like 2 to 6 years was kind of the guess for when he's replaced. I mean, he's not going to last much longer.
You can't live that long with cancer. They say it's terminal, and
so
they
Chris,
just sort of like covering up the
Chris, if you're just joining us, we're talking with John about how the royal family are preparing to replace King Charles already amid his battle with cancer, which is interesting because I think as soon as he got into office, people were saying, 2 to 6 years max, 2 to 6 years max, before we see another king, right? And I think we all know who that gonna be.
Who's next in line?
Well, not Harry, not Banksy Harry. No, I mean,
he married an American.
It's the Middleton queen. That's what it's like. It's Middleton and Will. Wait, where's my Will picture? Prince Will. We just had him with all that cocaine on his nose. You know what I mean? I just feel like, I don't know. It's hard also because, like, is he as evil as you want him to be? I don't feel like he is. I feel like, if you knew your mom was murdered and you had that much of that much of her face.
Is bigger than his face.
Okay, that's true too. I think that does play into this. Prince Harry,
all that money, and he couldn't save his hair.
Well, hear me out. Hear me out. What if it is literally that this is Prince Chucky's son, but this isn't? What if that's what the deal is that Harry's straight up a love child? Princess Diana's
they
love
both
child.
have the same, like, it looks like there's a rubber band right around their eyes and their ears, and the top of their head is like popping out. They have the same head shape.
Yeah, it's that Anglo-Saxon forehead.
Now that you mention it, William does vaguely resemble Prince Andrew.
You've seen this, right? You've seen
this,
this,
right?
right?
Diana's trainer, right? Like her,
right,
fitness instructor or something.
Yeah, exactly.
What
John,
they
do you have thoughts on that? Or go ahead, sorry, Chris. Sure.
No, I was just gonna say, I was fucking around. I was gonna say what they do is they make a clone, and when your body dies, they have to like upload your consciousness into the next body. That's how they live forever.
Yeah, the Middleton middleware. Exactly. That makes sense. I don't know, but like,
what the
go ahead.
The crystal scepter is for.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also in the Three Caballeros and Donald Duck, which is how you know it's real. But do you think that this makes sense? I mean, he's been blacklisted. his father kind of doesn't like him unless it's not his father. How strong of a believer in the love child conspiracy are you?
Supposedly that's why
possible.
they did what they did, right?
Have you heard there's a theory that like adultery is actually genetically beneficial?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh,
it's
because
Well,
they're so
as a fellow leftist, please, from California, please explain.
I was just reading about it that basically there's a lot of arguments that it's normal that after you have one child in a couple, about 3.5 years later, that's the age when one parent is basically able to take care of a child, like a mother can carry them around or something like that, and that it helps with genetic diversity rather than repeating the same mixture of the same man and woman. It's beneficial for the gene pool for her to go and cheat and find other men.
Interesting.
That sounds great in theory until you have a bunch of half siblings all banging each other.
Yeah,
That's weird.
that's true.
I mean, that's just the Amish community.
You think the Amish community I don't know this. Like, are the Amish community known for infidelity?
No,
I
for
thought
being inbred.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
True. Okay, I'll give you that. But they do a pretty good job because if you have 10 kids and then those 10 kids have 10 kids each or whatever, and you have like 103 kids, by the time you're 2 cousins out, then you have a solution to promoter sequence incestuous crossing, right? It's like all you need is two genes out, and you should be fine. So I don't know. Good luck to the Amish. I still
Also,
think that
having
this
an insular community, the Amish, I'm sure, probably have a lot of cross wires more than other places. Because think about it, if you live in a major city and you're just a regular person, like a secular individual, you're not going to only be looking within your own community for someone to marry. You're going to be probably just going to the general population. So it's going to be less likely for that to happen to you if you're not being so overly selective.
What about the Jack the Ripper thing, right? Where Jack the Ripper was king? Do you know this one, John? The idea that Jack the Ripper was a royal, like an older royal, and then Princess.
Yeah, I
Diana.
thought about that. Yeah, I think he might have been played by various royal people, like he wanted to murder like colonists or whatever, or possibly for their own reasons, like they wanted to get rid of somebody who was like a witness to something they've done. Because they got criminal past, the whole royal family.
So supposedly, like Jack the Ripper was actually a group of aristocrats that went around doing things.
I'd like to expand on that.
Or a name attached to sort of like one of their agents, sort of thing. Which could also be themselves.
They wrote in the paper, and that's what the police told everybody. It was this one guy, Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper. And it was like 6 guys with masks on.
So there was the idea there was a prince who had some sort of what's the deal? So first off, Diana Spencer comes from the Spencer line of Earl of Spencer, who was the Scotland Yard guy, right? So the reason why the Spencers were important was because her great-great-grandfather had been in charge of the Scotland Yard case to find Jack the Ripper. And Jack the Ripper was known for killing a bunch of prostitutes in really weird ways. There's all sorts of conspiracies. Was it a Masonic art? Was it, a revelation that someone had, said something in public they shouldn't have said?
There's a lot of movies. There's a movie in there somewhere. Like
there's
for
hundreds.
Sure.
There's hundreds of movies about Jack the Ripper. That's the other thing. Like, why are Americans in 2024 aware of a guy who killed some prostitutes a couple hundred years ago in England? Why is that something we've all heard about? Why is it so important to the royals?
The movie that I want to see is King Henry VIII in his Batman era. Y'all know about that?
No.
Batman. It was a king. I'm not sure if it was him. I'm like 80% sure it was him. But he would go out at night and like be a vigilante and like beat up criminals and stuff.
There is a conspiracy about that King Henry VIII was the real Batman. I saw a video about that recently.
Okay.
Which
did he have a utility belt?
Yeah, he had all the things he wanted, and this is actually where some of the royal Q,
Whoa, did he have bat vision goggles?
Maybe he had some sort of special lenses so he could see in the dark. I would not be surprised at all. That's kind of the idea. If you had enough money to get whatever you wanted.
Did have a utility belt.
Yeah. And he had, what do you call it?
Utility hanging off of it.
He had a cod piece, right? So that's basically a utility belt with like a little bit of protection. So
Utility.
I mean, the job's not that hard. You just have to restrain some like drunk guys doing naughty stuff. You got to like beat them with, you got to hit them in the head with something like a club, and then
Yeah,
tie them up
use
or
a
something.
codpiece, the baton.
I was
I mean-
reading about like basic law enforcement in like Victorian England, and it turns out like it was some really banal shit. Like there was this one where some, I think, baron or like low level royal guy got pulled over by the constable for riding his carriage home drunk, and he was literally asleep in the fucking thing, and he got a ticket from the guy. They had a whole big argument too because the constable's not supposed to take it royals, but he's like, dude, he's driving drunk. He's gonna fucking hit somebody. Come on, this is a problem. It was
He's
literally
not
the
driving,
exact
the horse
same
is
shit we were
driving.
dealing with today.
The way I remember that Prince Albert Victor was Jack the Ripper is because Prince Albert piercing. I guess that's like not something everyone needs to do. But this is supposed to be Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria, allegedly Jack the Ripper. Now, he supposedly had some sort of incestuous genetic issues that had made him not eligible, even though he was firstborn, not eligible to be the king. And he was sidestepped.
But they had a lot of kings that were genetically.
So you can only imagine how much worse this one was than the rest. You know?
Okay.
And that's kind of the idea.
Yeah.
So they make them into X-Men.
That makes me kind of doubt that he had the wherewithal to be the Ripper, though.
X-Men is actually a good, interesting analogy there. What do you think about incestuous mutations for the point of X-Men?
I think more often people don't really think about just what percentage of the world is actually inbred. I'm not going to name any cultures, but certain cultures definitely do have like
Russia. No, I'm just kidding. What?
Yeah,
Canada.
I mean, if they seem to function to be at least like a country on the map, then like I guess how bad is it really? Not that I want to do it. I don't want to mess around and find out like how much incest we could get away with. Like doesn't sound like a game anyone's gonna win in the long run.
Okay.
The tighter knit a community is, the higher the likelihood that's going to happen. So,
true.
Like where I live right now, I think there's like 3 Mennonite families in my city, and it's like that's very limited. They're probably like your brother is probably marrying your wife's sister.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's the best case scenario right there.
Yeah.
Well, but also royal families for the sake of you think that they're doing this out of not just necessity but choice. I mean, if you're a royal family, it's not that you don't have other genes available, it's that you think your genes are better and you're worried about polluting them, right?
I don't even think it was much of a genes thing because they didn't really know about genes as much. It was like, for example, the Russian stuff, it was like political exchanges. They would be like, oh, as a gift to the German country, we're gonna send our daughter to marry this German prince or whatever, and then they would like exchange people in order to make like political ties. Like, oh, now that our kids are married, our countries are at peace together.
Yeah, consolidation of power. That's what I'm.
Actually, yeah. When it was all feudal, there wasn't really a national border. If the same king lorded over two different territories, like two different cultures, then they were just one big territory at that point. Like England and France were pretty much one country for I think like 400 years, like in between like I think like 1400 and something like that. Because they just had the same royal families, they were like politically pretty much unified. They were just like two states in one country, kind of.
I think that's another thing that's interesting about the royal family is it does seem like at some point draconian elitism happens where the royal family thinks that their blood is magical. Right,
but they don't get like electricity powers and shit. They just get gigantic Habsburg jaws.
I mean, we don't know that. I don't know that they don't have magic powers. I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Maybe they can fly.
You could argue that the ability to like control mass opinion at any given moment, that's pretty much like a reality bending power. Like you could create whole countries like that, take them down.
Yeah,
that is a reality bending power, but I've met a lot of people who have that ability. They just haven't had enough cameras pointed at them to actually exact.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the point, right? Maybe it's not really just a bloodline thing, but it's a human thing. Maybe humans are just naturally like psychic like that, or able.
Some people are natural performers. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what's like the royal stewards of Spencer. Why it's interesting that because Princess Diana was saying at one point, "Hey, like I live with these royals, these Dracos, these reptilians." Right? She didn't say very nice things when she described them. I remember standing right here also. I never really got too deep into the Princess Diana conspiracies until I was in France, standing out over the tunnels, and I was like, okay, clearly there's something strange about this situation. But Princess Diana Spencer's grandfather had been the one who discovered this case, and like we said, it's not something that's full cut and dry. No one's ever said, oh, well, we know exactly what happened with Jack the Ripper. So the fact that the person in charge of that case ends up their granddaughter married into the royal family.
Yeah.
That not just into the royal family, to the freaking prince, like to the son of the queen. That's pretty interesting. And there's kind of three major theories. One, that Albert wanted revenge for having not been given his proper place, or that he had also had a lover who was, against the family's recommendations, and his girlfriend was put into the coal mines and, lobotomized. That's like the second theory. And the third one, protecting the royal family secrets, right? Because the secrets of the royal family, that they weren't actually British originally, and that they had put themselves in charge, and the erasure after 1666 of any evidence, because the pushing of getting rid, like the Sophia Naturalization Act, got rid of like 180 more prime candidates for the royal family. And so all of a sudden, this House of Wilhelm, which calls itself now the House of Windsor, pushed itself into charge. But there's other people that were supposed to be in charge of England, right? So not even having like the royal, priority. What's the word? Like the royal. John, you know the word that says you have the right to be king?
Succession.
Right succession, I suppose. Yeah, having the heritage.
Divine mandate.
Mandate. There
Divine
you go.
Mandate.
Yeah,
I knew that
dude.
from the Chinese.
I was gonna say, you've got more discipline than all of us, because you.
That's not true. What are we looking at, buddy?
I see a gold whistle.
My freaking microphone muted itself as I was trying to say you're not Chinese, you're Korean and Japanese. But I tried.
Oh no, they're trying to fuck with your throat chakras.
They don't want anyone to know what's up. And Batman. Okay, well let's do. We did the British thing. I think enough people know about Britain. Okay, so my buddy here, Tony, does this amazing special. I heard about this from my mother. So my mother's like, did you hear that the Nazis are, like these racists are saying all these horrible things, and there's this horrible guy, and I was like, Tony, what? Like he's great. He's like the nicest gay guy in Hollywood, and he says there's a plastic garbage net there's a huge pile of garbage just floating around in the ocean now. Huge pollution. It's called
not really.
It's called Puerto Rico.
It's large.
It's called exactly. Wah wah wah. I thought that was great. See, and you're Puerto Rican, so you have to love it. Look at your face. Let's like zoom in that. See? Yeah, exactly. But every Puerto Rican I know loved it, and it's just only like white women who've never been to Puerto Rico, except my mom did go once in the 70s. But most of the white women who are upset about those kinds of jokes, and I mean, I felt like Kill Tony. One of the other points he brought up.
My grandpa used to tell a joke. We used to ask him if he ever wanted to go on vacation back to Puerto Rico, and he would always say no, and we would ask him why, and he said there's too many Puerto Ricans there.
Yeah, see? Yeah. Which is exactly what you would say about any, like, I don't want to go back to California. There's too many Californians there. It's just it's a fun way to talk, right? It's not like he's really a hateful person. And so Tony similarly is like...
No, he's from fucking Puerto Rico. Holy shit.
Right. Yeah. Which means he's probably
Jose?
used to different kinds of culture also. Like there's all kinds of different people in Puerto Rico. So, but Tony's making this joke, and he's also saying, I got sent a list of things, because he does YouTube podcasts. Every week he has to look at a list of things you're not allowed to say. And it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I don't think a lot of people get that. We're at a point where there's further and further restrictions to the freedom of speech than ever before.
Censorship is wild now. It's insane.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate? What are you thinking about when you say that?
I mean, it's everywhere. Like you're just not allowed to openly speak. There's even things that, like, I don't know, if we're talking about like Israel and Palestine, like if you say, like if you say a fact about the Islamic religion, you will get canceled. And it's like, it's a fact. It's literally written in the Quran. And it's like, so you're still not allowed to talk about it because you'll get fucking canceled.
Right. Like, well, I feel like it's always been that way, though, about talking about, the Babylonian Talmud. So we're kind of there's a parity there where you're not allowed to talk about each other. You're not allowed to know each other, right? And also to understand the differences between a verse from a Bible or a Quran or a commentary, right, that happened 1,000 years ago on either one of those things. Like on the Torah is not the same as a commentary, or the idea that people don't always follow their religion the same way. Either discipline, authority. What does that mean, right?
You can't start rattling off Quran, Torah, or Bible verses and acting like every Muslim, Christian, Jew is going to be following them.
Can you imagine a Christian actually following the 10 Commandments? I can't.
Bro, this shirt had a nylon in it. This would be a sin in Christianity. So yeah, absolutely not. Like
it's all open to interpretation. But
sick bans on children for making fun of someone for having a bald head. That makes no sense.
I think they all kind of
these books out and say this is what these people believe. Like that's not the truth. Like I have plenty of Muslim friends that I go drinking with. And alcohol is totally forbidden in their religion, and they openly say they're probably going to hell for it. And we laugh.
I think there's all these like differences with how people follow their religion and with the religions themselves, but they really do reconcile. I mean, if you look at Islam, Judaism, Christianity, they all have their own sect of mysticism. And I think like if you have the discipline to follow that rabbit hole through your own faith down to like the really, really like deep stuff, that's when you start to see similarities with everything else. Gnosticism is a lot like, a lot of like metaphysical stuff like the Kabbalah. And what's the Muslim one? Is it like Sunni or something? Shiite? I don't know.
Sunni and Shiite in Islam, yeah.
Well, Sufi Islam is
Sufi, that's
Sufi is like the wisdom Sophia, right? Yeah.
Sunni and Shiite they disagreed on who would lead the religion after Muhammad's death. And then
I think the real point is when you actually apply those to your day-to-day life, by the time you get there, it's like, well, what are you doing? I mean, if you're really successfully applying it, then you're not doing all this stuff that's bad for you, because then you're not going to get the blessings of God or Allah or source or whatever, like you have to, there's certain things you have to do that's not really like politically incentivized or even economically, but it's just something you do for yourself. And if you have the discipline to do it, well, you're there, right? You're at the same places where everyone else is pointing.
Yeah, I just feel like religion in general came up as a way to control people and help answer questions that they couldn't figure out. And
I don't think every part of religion has to be that way. I think that it evolves into that. Like a big part of religion is to get something. So you might think of it as a subscription. I want to buy immortality. I want to buy knowledge. I want to buy wisdom. So like there's 5 things religion usually gives you, like power, wisdom, knowledge, immortality, influence, right? And so for a lot of religions, it's like, I want to become a priest or a witch doctor or a Jedi. And then there becomes a social control out of religion, which is that intelligentsia and that secular statism. And secular statism is always to conform, always to fit, always to make sure everyone is groomed. And it's fascinating because on one hand, evolution used to take a lot longer. We're telescopically moving faster than ever before.
Exponentially.
Yeah. But at a certain point in time, the fastest way to evolve was through religion. Well, because religion would be a way you could epigenetically train people and you could create an entire ethno-state. Right?
Well, to add to your point, I guess to put it in a more crude sense, like not all of us are holy enough to be able to abstain from alcohol 24/7. Not all of us are disciplined enough to abstain from sex until marriage. Like there is a hierarchy to it because it's harder for some people than it is others. A lot of people fall into bad patterns like addiction, wrath or whatever, like bent on revenge or something. And religion does help you. Like you have to start somewhere, right? And if you're starting like really low and like you're really submitting to your baser instincts all the time, I mean, you can't just have like this high level grandmaster mystic, like, spend time on like trying to walk you through the basics of the basics, like how to be a person with agency. That's like really initiation stuff. But, that's, I think, what religion is for. It's like Christianity is a great metaphor. Like you have most people who are sheep, right? And you need a shepherd to kind of like lead them along the way. And hopefully they don't do anything exploitive with that power or influence over people, which I guess is the big thing, right? They always do. They always do.
Yeah. I think it's okay to do exploitation. Hear me out. I think exploitation's fine as long as it's positive reciprocity, right? Like, so you can think about that book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, where bees are exploiting a flower tree, and it's like, wow, we totally got all the pollen from this tree, we're exploiting it. But then the flowers are like, wow, we totally got these bees to deliver our pollen everywhere. We're exploiting those bees. So positive reciprocities where both feel like the others exploited, but really
it's called
that
mutualism.
Yeah, mutually assured exploitation.
Symbiotic relationship, I would
there's
say.
parasitic relationships, mutualist relationships, and I forget what the third one is, where there's no benefit or negative effect on one, and the other has a benefit. I forget what that third one is.
Symbiote, parasite.
And then there's parasitoidism, where it acts like a parasite for a while, but then actively kills the host eventually, which is like a wasp that bursts out of a caterpillar. That's parasitoidism. I've been reading a lot about parasites lately. If you want to find a particularly interesting one, look up Dendrogaster. Turns out it's a fucking crustacean. Weird as shit. Rhizocephala is also very weird. Dendrogaster, it looks like a coral or an anemone.
Whoa. Yeah, cute.
Yeah, that's actually an arthropod, like a crab or a fly, a butterfly, or a shrimp. But what it does is it goes inside of sea stars, and it'll grow. It'll totally shed its shell, its exoskeleton, get rid of almost all of its muscles, its nerves. It pretty much just becomes like the inner layer of your intestine turned inside out, and just sucks nutrients out of the starfish aggressively. And then it'll eventually create little larvae that look kind of like spheroid shrimp, and they'll swim out and burrow into other starfish. And yeah, that's how they reproduce. It's the craziest thing. So little is known about these things because they're hard to find. You can't tell whether or not a starfish has one without cutting it up. So yeah,
what do you think about the idea
never seen one metamorphose from a larvae into an adult.
Oh man, look at this poor frog's got one. That sucks. I don't know. So
there's no way there's a Dendrogaster and a frog.
Oh really?
That's
they can't.
That's a kind of parasite.
Looks like a Dendrogaster's gotten this starfish at the very least.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there's some crazy, I forget what it's called. There's a crazy fungus out there that actually goes through like all the different types of life. Like it acts like an animal at one point, and acts like a plant at one point, and acts like a fungus at one point. And it's like a bunch of little spores that get together and create this thing that crawls around.
Slime mold. That's a protist, not a fungus. But yeah.
And then there's all kinds of fungus that will the zombie fungi thing where it like infects ants and gets them to climb to the highest point.
Slime molds, it's actually it's a protist, but the individuals that come together into a large amalgamation aren't related genetically. So they actually merge their cells, even though they're not genetically similar. Like they're not from one body. They form a body. It's chimerism, which is similar to parasitism, but this has been mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
It looks alien.
There's more life on Earth that seems alien than life on Earth that doesn't, because the life that we look at is usually either something with a backbone, which is relatively new in the evolutionary playing fields. Like it's a good system because obviously you could put wings on it, make a bird, you could put a shell on it, make a turtle, you could put hands and feet on it, make a person. It's a good structure, but an arthropod body, that came so much longer ago. So it's just had so much more time to evolve into so many different niches. So we've got things like crabs, we've got things like butterflies, Dendrogaster. Only recently have vertebrates started evolving in that direction. Like there is a tumor that spreads between dogs as like a sexually transmitted disease, and it was a dog. There was one dog that had a type of cancer, and it's now that dog's offspring is a thing that's not really a dog, quote unquote. It kind of fills the same niche that Rhizocephala fills in crabs.
Do you guys know about Anatoly Kasparovsky, the Soviet psychic healer?
No, I thought you were talking about the chess guy for a second.
So
that would be Gary.
In the Soviet Union, Kasparovsky did a lot of things working on for the Soviet Union to both remote view and to protect against psychic attacks, also to protect the Soviets against mass hypnosis, but also to help the Soviets mass hypnotize. And one of the things that he talked about was the idea of psychic parasites.
Did he ever get a chance to talk to James Randi?
I don't know. I have no idea if he did or not. I'd like to.
That would be amazing.
I would like to set something like that up. He's still around. He's 85, but he's fascinating dude. I think he actually looks pretty good, even though he dyes his hair. He's doing all right. But
psychic parasite sounds like a really interesting phenomenon, though, because I believe things like cigarettes and other addictions are psychic parasites that have physical manifestation.
All right, well, go on that, because that's basically what he's saying. I'm curious about your
literally anything that takes your energy and willpower away from you and redirects it to its own ends is a parasitic mimetic organism.
Like so, like the idea that vitamins, mononicotinamide, that some of these vitamins are associated with specific consciousness, the way crystal radios are associated with specific radio frequencies. Maybe there's conscious frequencies which are able to latch onto your blood-brain barrier through the crystals. Do you have thoughts on that?
I don't even think it needs consciousness. Is a very niche evolutionary trait. I don't think anything needs consciousness to further its own physical existence. Like a coral doesn't need to be conscious to continue making more coral. It's just good at it. I think the only reason we're conscious is because every niche in evolution that didn't require a conscious mind was already filled.
But there's also power. There's reverse power to that, right? Because if you're I always say, like, you can't think your way into a better body, but you can think your way into a worse one. Like, you could literally destroy your body using just your thoughts, or at the very least, it could start with a thought. So that's why, I think if healing probably works the same way. I mean, I don't think you could really heal unless you first want to heal. And like, that's an entirely psychic process, right? You can't.
Willpower starts as a thought. Like if you go to the gym and you go try to deadlift a weight that you can't move, and you keep training, and eventually you get to the point where you can move the weight that you could not move before, you used thought, of course, thought and other tools to change yourself from something that couldn't do that to something that could do that. That's a big jump.
Yeah, 100%. Same thing with, like, I don't know. I always get that process with like skateboarding, or especially like, martial arts, or when I think of extreme sports, like you're trying to learn how to do something that's so alien to your body. And it's really like, it's this kind of repetition where you program it into your like the fiber of your being. So it's not even something you're supposed to think about, because it's like such a high level movement that once you try to think about doing it, you're like, you're gonna mess it up. You have to kind of tap into something. I guess it's just intuition, right?
I definitely imagine that if we're frequency-based beings, the idea that something could live off of those frequencies, the way we're talking about consciousness using bodies, right? What's the difference then with slight consciousness using matter in general? And does that create sort of material drones, or at what level can you completely mask our senses? If every part of your signal is being corrupted by a parasite, so you're living in a sensual delusion, how far are we from living in a real? I mean, this is basically a biological explanation of the Matrix, right?
Yeah,
you're talking about the inherent limitations of our senses, and how what we perceive reality is just like a fraction of like the available spectrum of vibrations and whatnot.
Yeah, but also if we're being manipulated. So let's say that not
like
just
who
that.
Can hijack that.
Yeah, what if there are parasites that literally are hijacking and messing with your senses, so that you're not seeing correctly? Yeah,
are we getting into Scientology now?
Senses and consciousness are a parasite. If you actually look at the relationship of the CNS, the central nervous system, and the rest of the body, and how many more calories your brain per gram is burning compared to literally even your heart, it looks like there's a parasite attached to an organism. It doesn't, like, if this brain didn't actually help you live and reproduce, it would be a parasite. I'm not kidding. It takes almost all of your energy to live. And like I said, like, there were plenty of niches for animals, plants, fungi that didn't require conscious minds. The only reason our bodies require this to live is because all those niches were filled. We can't filter feed. We live in air.
Yeah. So how far do you think that goes, though? Like, do you think that because people will say that what they're experiencing is only so real. Like, how far do you think that's going? Are all of us being controlled? Is this, Philip K. Dick talked about the idea that we think we're living in this beautiful modern time, but maybe it's actually 70 AD and everything's an illusion, right? And we're just supposed to forget that Christ just died recently. That might be kind of a silly metaphor, but it might also be an explanation for why we put up with the fact that we're talking to people all over the world. There's a guy in England right now here. There's a dude working on removing black mold. I got like a guy in a Mennonite farm, basically, New Yorkers. How are we all talking to each other and then just acting like this is completely reasonable when it's all through radio? I mean, how much of this is psychic, and we've just kind of calmed ourselves down to accept it as normal, right?
Yeah,
I think that the
reality sort of thing.
The vibrations don't become messages just because they hit your nervous system. They're always thoughts, even when they're in the ether. That's it. Like,
so you think that thoughts are not? You think that we're picking up on thoughts? We're not even just manifesting the thoughts. We're picking.
You're
up
a radio that receives the thought. Yeah, from the conscious universe around you.
I actually agree with that, but also the question is how do you change? How do you fuck with that frequency? So you're not just stuck listening to the same crappy station that most other people are listening to.
Change which you cannot accept.
I mean, no, I'm saying like really it's just about, to me, it's what can you actually change, which is your physical body, your physical habits, how you engage with your thoughts and how you engage with your emotions. So
I'm not sure if that's even useful though, like, because there are things that you could change that you're not aware that you could change them. So instead of figuring out where the limitations are and then working within that, why not figure out where the limitations are and purposely try to break them?
What I'm saying is like you can't get to those higher degrees of control until you master your fundamentals. Like a lot of people, I think, make the mistake of like overextending their control and their ability to manipulate matter, but to a degree where they're undisciplined. Like let's say you have all these like terrible physical habits, but then someone gave the ability to like control a whole nation. Eventually your physical habits will get up to you and it'll affect your mood. You'll get irritable. You won't sleep. You'll have like messed up sleep schedules. Like you'll have a really like affected sense of self-esteem, which could also affect your decision making. And this is what I'm saying. Like you have to have fundamental mastery first, then you could actually engage with the higher levels at a more like in a more healthy way. And I think it's like when you try to like, that's really the key to like messing around with your frequency and what like patterns you're experiencing. If you have unhealthy habits and if you identify too much with your thoughts and you just lock into your emotions, yeah, then that's going to be like a very like downstream perspective and you're just going to be a victim of life,
Yeah, no, I've noticed that. Like as I've tried to like widen my I don't want to say grip on the world because that's the complete wrong way to phrase it, but just like widen my
I can literally hear everything happening in Andrew's workplace. Andrew, what were you about to say? Sorry, there's a reason for that.
Sorry, it's Team. I was just gonna add a tag onto what Chris was saying. Is that you could have the most competent driver, but if the car is a piece of shit, you're not going to be able to have the same spiritual mobility, so to speak.
This is true. You guys familiar with the book The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar, or maybe even the Cumberbatch Netflix video about it? Have you seen this yet?
No, I didn't.
I would highly recommend reading the book if you haven't. At very least, watch this hour-long Netflix. It's like super short, actually. And so basically, the story goes that, and this is written by the Roald Dahl guy who did James the Giant Peach and the Witches book, where the kids get turned into mice and eaten by British ladies. This is about a man who's working for the British government in the late 19th, early 20th century, and finds out about an Indo-Brit named Imrat Khan who has the capacity to see with his eyes closed. And so he spends a bunch of time for the British Royal Service learning how to see with his eyes closed. It takes him about 6 years.
Oh.
And after about 6 years, he learns how to see with his eyes closed, and he becomes a very powerful man. So powerful that he kind of leaves the British Empire behind, goes to Switzerland, and arranges for a corporation that will sell products so that he could just like be a billionaire forever and put that money towards his own philanthropic purposes, right? But it's an interesting look at kind of psychic phenomenon and how it would evolve that Ubermensch might place themselves out of the system that created them, right? Do you have a thought about that there might be characters that have maybe come out of America, the Soviet Union, or Britain, and now don't play by the same rules as everybody else? Like we're stuck in the game.
Yes, absolutely. I think when you could view reality through a degree of like a metaphysical nature,
Right.
and most other people are conditioned to do the exact opposite of that, you have a frightening degree of control over not just like individuals in mass, but also just the regular people that you see in your everyday life. I mean, it's really understanding like how do you really brainwash a person? How do you really control a person? And it's nothing to do with like changing their mind. It's nothing to do with presenting like specific facts in front of them. I mean, you can, but really the most effective way bypasses rationality. So it's not about making them feel a certain way, but if I control in the mornings make you feel angry, in the afternoons make you feel sad, then in the evenings make you feel happy again. And if I could do that every single day, I'm controlling like 1/3 of your reality. Because a third, like our reality can be broken down to how we mentally perceive things, how we intuit them with our emotions, and how we physically engage with matter. So if I could control like your emotional pattern, then that's like a huge degree of control, and that's scary. Like that's why self-mastery is important, in my opinion. That's the only way to that's the only defense you got, really.
So, but like, how much of that then is basically everyone is under control, and how much of that isn't even parasitic? It's our own. We're being influenced by each other, and maybe by characters that are have more free agency than the rest of us, right?
Well, the reason why I'm not worried about that is let's say there are archonic beings, demonic beings, like something we can't perceive. The thing is, like, if they're our controllers, they have controllers, and their controllers have controllers. And if you go all the way to the top, you're only going to get one answer, and that's God, right? So it's like even the demons are of the divine spark, I guess, or like ultimately.
I've found that like it doesn't even take a large amount of influence to change like the mind or the mood, not the mind, but the mood of large numbers of people. It even just one average person being more or less chaotic or calm in even a large city can really change the temperature of the whole place within like a week. I'm not kidding. There's only 6 degrees of separation between any two people in the United States of America. So like we're a lot more connected than we think, and it's way easier to drive large numbers of people crazy than it is to calm down large numbers of people. So if we all just made an effort to let everybody else around us know that hey, things are okay and we don't need to freak out, even if it's not always happening, then maybe we would all be a lot calmer as a society.
Right. How about the weather?
In situations that people usually gravitate towards the calmest person in that situation. I don't know.
Is that really true though? Because sometimes I see that like people tend to get into a frenzy in large numbers very easily, and that doesn't need to be a riot.
Yeah.
Yeah, just echo chambers like on the internet.
Yeah.
I do think.
But in a sort of like a life situation, sort of like a disaster or something, people tend to, they'll all start shooting off it at different directions, like mentally. But if there's somebody who's calm, they'll sort of congregate around the calm person, because like when the actual accident or whatever is over, then it's the calm person that they sort of congregate around.
Like if everybody gets to be their own little like beacon of rationality out there, then I think we can all kind of maybe like rein in the collective anxiety that society is feeling, because there is a collective consciousness out there, and I think that a lot of people have been purposely pushing it further towards anxiousness than away from it. Does anybody else have that sense?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I think it's when it comes down to it, like someone was telling me, they were like, I think everyone just wants to exist in their own little bubbles of sanity. And the problem is there's people in the world whose job it is to literally pop those bubbles of sanity.
Yeah.
It's
like society is a hamster in a wheel, and somebody's like cattle prodding its backside just because they've got a generator hooked up to it or something. Yeah. And society's getting tired of that shit.
Well, we did a video at some point on Europa with Honey.
Wait a second. If we're all being used as batteries and producing energy for this system, that's kind of like an emotional matrix rather than a mathematical one.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's
a cheap prison.
It's a demon. It's feeding off of our energy, and we're just feeding it by continuing to run in the fucking wheel.
So this interview I did at one point,
take a deep breath and relax, it'll stop.
With Hanin Abdelaziz, he's talking about cloud busting machines, right? So Wilhelm Reich had made these machines that are useful for creating storms, making clouds in the sky. Very effective technology. and he's making these machines now for Germany, Austria, as well as the United Arab Emirates, which are using these.
It looks like you're frozen because you're showing a picture of another podcast.
Yeah, that's fair. But I was just trying to show you the guy. Point is, one of the things he said in the interview was that it wasn't just affecting the weather, right? That a major part of this is that weather affects mood and mood affects weather. And I wonder about that too, because everyone's saying, you know, I mean, we kind of know this. We talk about the harp, and everyone's like, wow, harp. What's harp for? Well, they say harp is supposed to help with, you know, VLF, extreme, you know, Schumann resonance, and maybe the weather. But everyone's conspiracy is it's actually affecting your mind, right? So what do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, everyone's got their own magnetic field, right? And I mean, the magnetism could really affect like the whole ionosphere or whatever.
Wait, you rub your shoes on a fucking carpet and you touch a doorknob and it shocks you. Like you see a little lightning bolt if it's dark enough come off the tip of your finger and hit the fucking.
But does that make you sad? I mean, that's the thing about the emotion.
But now imagine you have a whole city full of people walking around all fucking day. That's going to generate some static electricity, and it's probably going to change the amount of lightning you're seeing, the amount of condensation in the air,
and the path of least resistance,
how and everything. And you know what? If it makes less sunlight hit, it'll probably make you a little depressed.
Yes.
Yeah, it just doesn't need to be mystical, man. Like there's probably a mundane explanation, not a mundane, but like an earthly solution behind it, or at least something we can investigate.
Well, I mean, it's not that it's just like mystical or not mystical. The interesting part is that there is a scientific explanation, but then you also see all these like ancient traditions who've been pretty much saying and like the same thing, except in a much more primitive way.
Yeah.
So it's like
mystical means we haven't figured it all the way out yet. Like so when mysticism when we looked up at the stars and it's like, what the fuck is that? And then we learned how to use that to calculate the seasons, and that created.
I know, but there's still a really interesting delay, right? Because when ancient mystics are saying like, oh yes, your thoughts can create reality and all that stuff, and you're like, okay, and then thousands of years later, you have like physicists saying, oh yeah, you know, on a quantum level, reality is actually just like both waves and particles, and your thoughts can actually influence that on the most fundamental level we could observe. So it's like, all right, that's like saying the same shit. I mean, it's good that there's a materialist like take and an explanation on it, but I think what really interests me is when these things start to kind of like integrate, you know, like when mysticism and science are both showing to say the same thing, and that's cool stuff, you know.
No, yeah, I'm definitely a mentalist, not a materialist. I really do believe that the entire universe is just God's mad dream.
Yeah, a fractal, like you know how one good way I like to put it, it's like if you as a human can just imagine or make up people in your head and make them have conversations with each other and all that stuff, what makes you think God's not doing that with us? Like maybe that's all we are.
No, but if you imagine the very edge of the universe, beyond that is the inside of your own skull, because you're still looking at your imagination.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. It's a good one.
How about the Sahara turning green? So this last hour, about an hour ago, there was an article. I'm trying to find the one I had. Where is it? Yeah, like this is happening right. This is like about a week ago, and then an hour ago. Exceptional intense rainfall has transformed the Sahara Desert. Morocco's southeast desert, a rare downpour has brought lakes and ponds back.
Did that actually bring in organic material, or is it just a bunch of silicate and water?
So the cool thing is, when you have desert and you have snow, eventually the snow settles on the top, so it doesn't drain into the ground, and then you've got birds that are coming and bringing wildlife. So yes, the Sahara has, in the last few years, been turning greener and greener because of the life finding in the desert life. Sorry, Daniel.
Well,
they're
also actively trying to make the Sahara greener. Like I don't know if you've heard of like the Green Wall, Africa's Green Wall.
Right.
They're literally planting like a row of trees across the entire continent. And then slowly
they need something to do, right? Something to do with
you need to figure out how to get a large amount of solid carbon and nitrogen into the soil. That's the thing, though. Like you need to cart that in. Either you need
water
to have animals come in and shit. Water retention. Well, if you have clay and silicate instead of just silicate, then the water will stick around.
But wait, what did Daniel? What did you say? Sorry.
It's about water retention on the first scale.
Right.
And then from there.
But that's also why that's why snow is so useful, because the desert gets so cold that it's actually keeping the water from turning back into liquid. So you have huge sediments of snow on the surface, which are not necessarily draining into the sand yet, right? So that's a major way it's been catching water on the surface in the process. And then also life is being brought back and forth because there are birds that are flying inland and then leaving again. Extremophiles are starting to return to Sahara. And I mean, yes, they're definitely doing some of this on purpose, but
You just
the
need
amount
tonnage of carbon and nitrogen, though. Like, without that, there's going to be a limit to the amount of actual life that can be there, because then there's just not going to be anything else to build more animals and plants out of.
You can get biochar, and that'll introduce the carbon for sure.
Yeah, but you got to put it on a train, or you got to have a cow walk in and shit it out. You know?
Yeah. How do you I mean? So that's an interesting idea. Is where are
you going to get the carbon and nitrogen from, and how are you going to move it
in the world? China, maybe. Like, so I'm just thinking, wherever today we have the largest CO2 production locations, this is the new fuel for food for plants, right? Like, it's not the
CO2
people.
is what plants crave.
It's what plants crave. So
It's what plants crave.
do we have thoughts on how we're gonna get? I mean, to me, it seems logical that these super polluted industrial centers will be the next rainforest.
Christian P. Norris is right, by the way. Bird poop is damn fucking concentrated nitrogen, almost 100%, because it's got so much piss in it.
That was what I was saying.
Maybe
this is
this is what crabs. This is what crabification of a whole nation looks like. That China's
Really?
just becoming a big old crab. That whole factory layer, that's just its hard shell. And
Only arthropods carcinify. There are like not even mollusks do that.
Bro, Democrats do this. Anybody becomes a crab if you give them time, you know.
Like arthropods do that because it's easy. It's harder to grab a single segment than it is to grab a long tail. So a lobster will evolve toward a crab-like body plan.
What's wrong with me? Why do these legs look so nice? Why do these crab legs look like it looks like a hitchhiker girl? You know,
a very healthy crab.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I like crab.
Remind me of a face hugger.
I think though also Daniel. You
By the
brought up
way,
this.
Alien was the quintessential movie of the 20th century. By the way, I really I was looking into that, like just the art style and like the amount of like technological the amount of like progress that had been made up to that point that they could comment on, and the amount of forward looking this is what space travel is going to be in 400 years.
I don't know how I could agree with you. I feel like it's a great movie.
That watercolor surrealist with the colored pencil look, like when people
it's quintessential for what it is. It's like the best feminist abortion advocacy film, right? That's all it is.
I think it's the opposite of abortion, actually, because that thing will kill you if you try to kill it.
You're missing the point clearly, because like the entire point of the movie, Sigourney Weaver even pushes the abort button, right? Like it's a big part of the film is that it's an unwanted pregnancy. She's a self-made independent woman. And that this baby will destroy her life. It's very clear.
Oh, wasn't that Alien 2?
No, that's Alien 1. That's straight up what...
I think she offs herself in Alien 2 because she has the queen inside of her.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about her killing the baby. Because the whole point of the movie, she's pregnant. She's a single mother. She doesn't want to have the baby. She ends up killing it. She pushes the abort button in the movie. Like, it's part of the... Hold on, where's the abort scene? Where's the button? Really? It's impossible to find the scene. 1979. Abort.
It's not all metaphor for her having sex with that black man.
Where's the button? There's a whole scene. She pushes the button. She pushes the abort button. She's like, no. And like, this is the thing. Like, there's all these people that have this date rape, unwanted pregnancies. The cat. She's a cat lady.
Yeah.
The whole movie's very
wrong with cat people.
No, come on. The whole movie's about a cat lady who wants an abortion. That's what the movie is. It's nothing else to it. It's like, I mean, it's a great movie, but I think that if we were going to say a quintessential movie from the 20th century, I would put like Metropolis, I don't know, or something like that. I think this is probably an essential like a perversion or deviation from where film was going in the 70s. You have a transition, which is very practical because you have this pendulum swing between studio works from the 30s and 1960s color studio works to 1980s The Godfather, where you have low lighting. You have what leads to Dogma film, Lars von Trier.
Yeah, watching the cinematic transition between the 70s and the 80s is very interesting. The 80s almost, especially in the early part of the decade, looks like an evil twin of the 70s.
Totally. And it's also, I mean, and it causes a reaction, which late 80s, which is Cocaine Studio, which I think is even more fun than 30s and 60s studio film. But
It's crazy because
then the grandiosity of 90s cinema, like Terminator 2, holy shit. Like there was
Yeah.
nothing like that beforehand. Like everything in the 80s was essentially a stage play with cameras before Terminator 2.
That's the other reason why I think it would be hard to say like a quintessential movie of the 20th century, because everything changes so drastically what is valued. It's hard to do that for me. But I do think that Alien
No, I really
movies are
think
important.
Alien takes everything that was done in the 20th century in cinematic and like gives a good slice of it, all the way from special effects to like the way storytelling is done, and all of that. Yeah, and also just like the technological positioning of society at the time and since.
It's worth noting that the name Sigourney means conqueror as well.
Right. Also, it's
wonderful.
important to know that before Sigourney weavers, people used to have to weave their Sigourneys by hand. So
Damn.
with the Sahara Sea and the Green Wall, I was going to ask Daniel. So you were talking about this, and do you have any thoughts on the effects of feedback loops? Like, if this was to work out, are you worried that it would do something so devastating to the environment, sort of the way we were taught in school? I know you're a Westie like me, about ecological feedback loops on Mars, right? Like the feedback loops, Mars, canals. There was a story we were told as kids that maybe 150 years ago, the aliens of Mars built these canals in order to bring water to different parts of the planet. Remember, this is what they taught us in 3rd grade, so don't get angry.
where
but
did you go to 3rd grade?
I'm from Santa Cruz, remember?
Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. So they told us that these canals could have eventually caused ecological feedback loops where the precipitation did not land back in the reservoirs, which would have the desertification of Mars could have been caused directly from geoengineering.
Just spreading
Thoughts?
it too thin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always think that there's probably things that we could tweak without realizing it and just completely destroy certain things. It's totally possible.
Yeah, I mean that's what humanity does. We just kind of
Like,
do whatever we
if this-
want, and then we see what happens later.
I
if
mean,
all of a
even
sudden we're
the
dumping more of the hydrosphere into Africa because it's now raining there more than it used to, what's that going to mean for places that used to depend on rain in other parts of the world? Like there's only a certain amount of water in the atmosphere at any given time.
well,
Do you-
I
do you-
think a lot of the water that's stored in the caps is discharging into the environment. So it's coming out of storage and spreading around.
Well, if we're going to
You
talk
think
about
that
this,
can
I
be
want
put
to
into
ask
the
you.
biosphere?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
there was two.
What were you saying?
I
was
say you
asking
think
for
that water could be put into the biosphere?
I mean, it's water's nature to sort of permeate everything, right? It weasels its way into all sorts of stuff. It'll become corrupted, purified ad infinitum.
Yeah, I got a question. Do you guys think it's possible for humanity to stay on Earth indefinitely? Like, do you think we could ever figure something out where we don't have to leave this planet and eventually? Like, can we stay here forever if we just figure like a Dyson sphere or something?
Counter question though. Do you think we could stay humans if we start to go to other planets? I think we would immediately start to speciate if we were separated like that, like squirrels on two separate sides of a gorge.
They'd
Yeah, I
probably
think
be
all
stronger.
you
Those
gotta
fucking
do-
space
It would
noids,
take-
fuck them.
If
take a long time for
if you
us to
can get beyond the ice wall, then I'm sure there's plenty of other places you can hang out. I mean,
I think that even when we go to the moon, that the people of the moon will be of the moon and they won't be able to come to Earth, and people from Earth won't be able to spend extended periods of time there.
Yeah.
And there'll be some crossover, but there'll immediately become two cultures. Because
Yeah,
people on the
there'll be
moon,
war.
they'll probably grow taller and have much more brittle bones and won't be able to spend much time in Earth's gravity field.
Yo, Sean,
And
did you see The Expanse?
No.
Oh my god, you like that show. From like what you're talking about right now, you love The Expanse. It's probably the best sci-fi show out there right now.
But the moon is only, 1.5 light seconds away from Earth. So that's going to introduce some minor complications with communication. If we had people on Mars that's hours away for a light speed message, we couldn't use cryptocurrency with a civilization on Mars. We'd have to use two totally separate internets that, we could pass messages between. But I really think that if we start
all
to
of
inhabit
these
other
worlds
planets,
are
we'll
yours. All of these
except
worlds
Europa.
except
Said
Europa.
I think light speed as a
I know
terminal
Elon Musk posted about
velocity
that.
is false.
Wait, our jet.
He said he's going to conquer Europa.
RGZ says, Andreas, just pull up a picture of the moon, take a screenshot and zoom in, take another screenshot and zoom in. Buildings all over the place, at least from what NASA shows us. Let's also look at this for a second. I think we could segue really hard into time travel with this. So I like the idea that we're living in a cul-de-sac and, flat Earth, NASA, world. Is this the one? I love this picture. Where's this picture of, this is it? No, flat Earth, world, models. Is this the one somewhere? Dang it. I'll never find the thing I want to find. NASA. Damn, where's the picture that shows you like all of the different ones, right? It's like this one right here, but it shows you like flat Earths around the world.
Flat Earths around the world, huh?
Yep. There it is. There it is right here. There it is. Okay, so basically you've got like the Egyptian flat Earth model and the Norse flat Earth model. The Hindu. You start to notice they're all spheres, right? They're just snow globes. Okay, so in the snow globe, you have the axis mundi or the Yggdrasil tree. By the way, the Jews do this too. It's not like, it's literally just NASA that's inverted. Everyone else's is the same. You got the Inca flat Yggdrasil, Navajo flat Yggdrasil, Hebrew shoal above the axis mundi. Similarly with these other models as well. So it's kind of an interesting idea that culturally we're inside of some sort of a spheroid reality. And I've been thinking a lot about Atlantis and Antarctica because if I were a time traveler, I mean, like realistically, I would want to make sure that I didn't interfere with my timeline. So if you've got a place that basically the rest of known civilization has ignored until 100 years ago, save a couple of these anomalous maps that have mentioned it, most of the world has just ignored Antarctica, and it's kind of under ice. So it's less likely to interfere with the rest of civilization. What do you think about this idea that they have a simultaneous civilization that's existing right next to us, maybe a more intelligent civilization, maybe a time-traveling civilization?
I mean, that's what Admiral Byrd said. He apparently went there by accident in the mid 20th century, right, and saw all sorts of crazy things like dinosaurs and
early 20th century, like 1928, I think is when he went.
Yeah, 1926 or something.
Yeah.
Still pretty crazy.
Yeah, all his ships were shot down by UFOs or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, John, what's the New Zealand Antarctica flight that crashed? You know what I'm talking about? The Mount Erebus disaster. Are you guys familiar with 901, Flight 901? So no. 901 hit the pyramid and was blown up, essentially, just completely destroyed. And the official story is that it was this is why were the Air Zealand craft flying so close to Mount Erebus in Victoria Valley. This is crazy. There's no reason that they should be allowed to be this close. And afterwards, they had just look how close they are to McMurdo Base. Impact position across Ross Island. So the thought is they were shot down by aliens. You know, that's the most reasonable thing that you could ever imagine. And then that the New Zealand and British government had to go in and to reclaim all of the pollution, they called it. The bodies, the steel, the aluminum, everything had to be picked up. So they had to have a team come in to clean up Ross Island, which seemed really crazy to me because it was like military intelligence to do this, not Greenpeace. But yeah, this whole idea that this is such a protected land that everyone who fights each other to the death turn and agree with each other to fight you if you come to Antarctica. How do you feel about that, right?
I think
that's crazy.
That feeds into the whole conspiracy of like a transcontinental black government, like that really transcends the government, because that's the only way something like that could really work, right? Is if they're secretly cooperating on a higher level than just nations, that they're actually like on some, I don't know, maybe it's corporate, maybe they're all like really hyper advanced corpos, you know, and they have access to things that we couldn't even imagine, like time travel.
Right. So the way I kind of visualize this is, you know, I don't know how deep are you into the singularity, like Kurzweil singularity idea? Are you familiar? How would you? So
yeah, if you have a quantum computing, like
that's hilarious that Sean said no to that. By the way, that's the funniest thing he's ever said.
It's this idea that once you develop technology to a degree where it's going to really develop itself, it's going to be like a runaway exponential development where we as humans can't exactly conceive of like what's going to be possible at that point. And you know, for all intents and purposes, time travel might be possible if you could literally simulate like computed realities down to like the atom. I mean, that's crazy. That means you could potentially create universes just like ours, but just slightly different, maybe in the past or something. And who knows what that could do? You know, maybe that could actually.
I'm not
What is
surprised
time
that Chris's. I'm not surprised that Chris's answer was that good. But Chris, that was a good answer. I was gonna say. So just really quickly before we get into time travel, let's just expand on what Chris just said, which is the singularity, technological singularity, and essentially, it's that idea that you get to a point where if you want to do something, it can be done, and all of this information is stored by ASI, an advanced general intelligence that becomes an advanced super intelligence, and if I ask it to do something, it can. Right? I mean, you can take any kind of technology because it has all the records of all the classified military documents, and the idea of keeping a secret is virtually impossible at that point because technology is moving so freaking fast that I say I want to build a underground layer or a space station or a interdimensional printer that can create new realities or a time machine. Doesn't really matter. We have everything we could have ever wanted so close together that we can make anything happen. We can realize any dream. That's a big part of the singularity. All right, now Sean, you asked what about time travel, right?
I was wondering what like time travel even is, because it feels like each region of space-time just has the property of matter, and nothing moves from one region of space-time to another. Like motion is kind of just like an illusion. So is that just like putting your consciousness at a point somehow earlier in time? Or is it actually reforming the universe around you so that it resembles a point earlier in time?
I think it's a little bit of both of that. It's Moore's law. So when you talk about singularity, another point of it is Moore's law. So we're getting to a point where transistors are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I was just thinking about this also. Do you guys think about what transistor technology is? It's not really computer technology. It's phone communication technology, right? Because Bell Labs made it. And Bell Labs was the first monopoly. I like to think about what it would be like in 1957 if we didn't make Exxon the biggest company in the world, right? Because before Exxon was the biggest company in the world, Bell Labs was the biggest company in the world. Bell was creating all kinds of stuff. Video.
I worked with the guy who worked at Bell Labs.
They invented the transistors, and that was our future, right?
They invented Unix and C++. And
yeah,
they literally invented everything your modern computers rest on. Like,
yeah,
everything.
it's also interesting because it's the Bell, right? The
They also discovered the cosmic background radiation by accident.
The infamous Bell UFO.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not kidding, because if you think about the Bell,
that thing looks like a death trap.
Yeah, but the Bell Labs, if you look at the Bell Labs logo,
I feel terrible for any person or animal they put inside that thing.
Just constantly spinning.
Like look at the Bell Labs logo.
Anxiety just about being put into that. Jesus Christ.
The Bell Labs logo looks
like a poor turtle and you have no fucking clue, or you're a human being and it's like, oh my god, I'm going to die.
All right, you get my point with the conspiracy that the Bell Labs communication, the Black Bell, they're definitely connected concepts, and that there was an antitrust monopoly case in order to divide up Bell so they could create manufacturing hubs like Intel, IBM, CTC became IBM, and eventually we got Intel as a manufacturing hub, which is now being replaced again through AMD, right? And so, I left off Xerox. I'm sorry, I left off Xerox. But Xerox, which was Park Labs research lab that Venrock used for Apple to create the GUI interface, which is now used in everything.
Digital filing cabinet. All it's ever been. It's all your computer still is. It's just really good.
No,
you're just pulling up pictures out of
disagree.
the file.
I disagree, because that would be if it was a computing technology, and it's not. It's a communication technology. This is the scanner dark.
Filing cabinets are a communication technology, even without the electronic aspects.
Well, wasn't someone saying that the reason they suppressed Tesla's technology is because it would blow out everything that, like all modern circuitry and transistors and all that technology, like wouldn't be able to function if we were using energy the way that Tesla was suggesting?
There are also certain things that wouldn't function economically. Like
I think that was at a time we were using energy in a really weird way, and today we're about to turn 3 Mile Island back on so we can make AI art of cats. So I don't know. I mean, like, our idea of how much energy should be or shouldn't be used has changed a lot. At the time, we also were just beginning our hydroelectric plants, and the amount of energy that we were receiving from hydroelectric was so beyond anything that we had capacity to even utilize at the time. I mean, today.
Well, also, back then we used something called pulse radio, where instead of sending a continuous wave that could communicate something like voice, it was literally like click, 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 click. So if you made a click loud enough on a given radio frequency, that's the definition of an EMP. So it would fry something, yeah. So that would probably be useless. But there's also things that Tesla created that would be useless from an economic perspective. You could transmit wireless power miles around, but you can't meter that. So you have no idea how much all the people in that area are using, and then they're going to be able to access it for free. You can't prevent them from drawing on it. That means they're probably not going to pay you, and now you can't pay your workers to keep the machine running, and now the wireless power generation thing just falls to shit. So what you need to do is you need to do that shit old school, run a wire, know exactly how much everybody's using, and bill them so that you can keep your running.
All right, but then maybe Daniel, maybe you have thoughts on this, because once you get to this level of Moore's law, where the things are so tiny, so close together that we're talking about angstroms, and light is touching light, you almost don't even have a labyrinth for supercapacitance anymore. It's just anything is flowing right next to each other. The only way to keep light divisible and not to corrupt other information is spectrum, right? So all of a sudden you can say, well, this light is the red light, or this light is the blue light, but you have multiple spectrums shining at the same time in parity over each other, right? And so you have multiple dimensions maybe of reality which are in parity at the same time. And maybe this is something to do with time travel. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? The idea that maybe light and space, as we hit a singularity, we have control over the actual maneuvering of ourself, of our frequency.
When you see singularity, do you just mean a point where a variable in a graph goes to infinity and it's not sensible to graph it anymore?
Kind of. Actually, that's something. So this actually gets into a almost religious question when you say it like that. I was thinking this the other day. I wrote this down. Probability of evolution of life by chance in a finite universe, roughly estimated from 1 in 10 to 40,000 to the power of 40,000, which is fine tuning of constants for abiogenesis depending on assumptions. Not a number I got on my own. Probability of life by a creator-driven design, however, conceptually shifts from chance to intent. And so from intent, implying an effective probability of 1. I mean, if the creator desires life to arise, you've got omnisufficiency. So from
what's the difference between a creator and a randomly generated life form?
So that was kind of my point. The randomly generated life form is irregular and improbable, because you're talking about basically this is that really fundamentalist Christian argument that you are unlikely to find a watch in the desert created by a sandstorm.
God created life by making enough universes that it would kind of just spring about randomly in a few.
So I think that's the point of the architecture. Like, there seems to be rules to architecture, and you have to wonder about omnipotence then. So if a God,
I think we're
were
confusing
to
the how and the why, though.
How powerful is omnipotence? So it can
no, but I'm saying I think we're confusing the how and the why. Like, if God created life by generating so many universes that some of those universes would have life in them randomly, then those two things would look identical, and there wouldn't be a functional difference between them.
Yeah, but that's still coming from the idea that phenomenological diversity creates finite, not finite creates diversity. You're starting from a God in that case either way. You're just saying that there is a certain amount of evolutionary freedom to that design, but even that freedom is based on submitting to the system of order, right? The natural law.
If you're like a farmer and you want to grow a certain type of plant, you just keep breeding them together until the one that has the desirable traits comes out. You know, you create a wide enough field until the probability gives you the result you want.
So to me, that seems like you're creating the initial conditions, and so you're seeing whatever can make it through choice through those initial conditions. But you still create those initial conditions.
Yeah, it's like if you build it, they will come.
Right. But then so you've got this system where it says life can happen if it follows my rules. Like I was saying, what's an omnipotent being? If God is all powerful, can God create a stone that God can't move, an immovable stone? Even
Satan is that rock,
right? Exactly, because you have to be powerful enough to do something that you can't even deal with, but you have to. It's how. But
Satan is the one that shoves a mirror in God's face and says, "This is all your fault."
Oh, please, mortals of limited intellect, explain God. I don't know, Gene, do you hear my point? That if God is all powerful, God can create something that God can't move, which is the universe or Lucifer's architecture. Right? God creates rules that God has to follow. That's how powerful those
so
rules are.
No, it's interesting that Sean said confusing the how and the why. I mean, the why is like equally important, I think. So I would say this, like when it comes to actual architecture, like what is architecture? Is it just the sum of its parts? Is it just buildings and shit like made in a cool way? No, it's like there's meaning behind it. There's an artistry to it, which is that you could look at architecture as just frozen music, you know, like structures that you build so energy could move in and out of it. And, you know, like it's like, why would you build a beautiful piece of architecture aside from like its pure function? It's why bother making it beautiful, you know?
I think God created all things that can be in a manifold that exists simultaneously, and we are one of those dreams, one of those manifestations.
Yeah. Oh, so I mean, okay, so that's interesting, right? Like if you look at like yeah,
you can have like a even gradient between all possible buildings where you could select one out of like a slice, but you could move sliders. There's no check boxes that you check and uncheck. Every single thing is an infinitely variable.
Well, but so that's the thing about variables, because there's ranges of probability and there are limits, right? So natural law limits, that's a question. If anything is permissible, then nothing has form, nothing has stasis, right? And also, if nothing has stasis, and nothing can transform, nothing can become itself or self-realize. So rules are really important, because with rules you have causality and consequentialism. If I do this, this happens, and if you take that away, there's no point to you making choices, right? Choices only matter in a game where rules matter.
Yeah, if you don't have a boundary or a surface or some sort of a limitation, then you can't have like a meaningful game to play, so to speak, or a life to live. Like, so every object needs to have an inside or an outside. If a basketball game didn't have a boundary and you could just take the ball as far away from the hoop as you wanted, then someone could just go 5 miles away from it and the game wouldn't progress. It would make no sense. Like, you have to have a limitation just to have a story to tell.
So that's also a reason why I think it's interesting that there could be a time-traveling Antarctica civilization from the future that lives in the past, because it's trying to isolate itself from any interaction that might affect our timeline simultaneously. Does that feel reasonable? I mean, like, that seems like the most reasonable reason why we haven't interacted with Antarctica.
I mean, if they are there, I'd have to see something that told me they were there, rather than a good reason to tell me that why I can't see them.
Besides, Lance Armstrong, etc. What kind of juice you got there, Daniel? What kind of juice is that? That looks pink.
Definitely not Lance Armstrong juice.
Oh, it's the pink lemonade. Oh, I love pink lemonade. That's pretty good. I don't know.
It's the Cheshire lemonade.
Did you grow up religious? I feel like when I went to your house, you had religious symbolism. But did you grow up religious, Daniel? You're muted, by the way.
My dad is from a Jewish family, and my mom is Ukrainian, so Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Right.
But it's more of like a cultural thing. Like both of them celebrate some religious holidays, just to keep up the culture. You know what I mean?
Of course. Well, do you have spiritual beliefs? Like, do you believe in aliens? Do you believe in time travel? Do you believe in any of these things that we're talking about? Do you believe in
for aliens, I think there's like a statistical explanation that kind of proves that they have to exist, but it doesn't really tie into with any other discussions of aliens. But if the universe is infinitely vast and infinitely large, then everything conceivable has to exist somewhere within it because it's that large.
Right. That's true. Then not only does everything conceivable have to exist, there have to be multiple copies of it, because there's only so many ways you can configure matter within a space that's like 2 cubic meters. So that means there's got to be a copy of you somewhere out there.
Probably many.
If it's infinitely vast, and there's
maybe not a copy per se, but a very similar.
Not like an exact copy of the matter organized in your body as it is now, where you sit, organized exactly as that is, sitting somewhere else, because there's only so many ways to organize matter in 2 cubic meters.
Yeah, I just feel like the word copy is wrong, though.
One of my favorite,
infinitely similar and infinitely different.
One of my favorite takes on like advanced alien species is because, you know, if you're a conscious being, then you have a certain frequency, which is like the nature in which you think, feel, and act and all that stuff. So if you do have like an advanced species in your place in reality, and then you do assume you take it for a fact that reality is downstream from consciousness, and it's all the effect of a causal relationship of consciousness and reality. I think it's one of the coolest ones was when they say that your frequency is like your coordinates in time and space. So if you could really change your frequency on a very fundamental level, there is no traversing like at any speed of light or anything like that. It's literally just you blipping out of one point in space time and just reappearing in another.
Right.
And that's that.
So I think a big issue. I agree with you. This is a problem because so many people will say, well, I can accept that because of the vastness of everything and the continual expansion of everything, that there must be something. And that's just such a limited acceptance and submission, because then you're saying, well, if there is, and there must be aliens or whatever, there might be even more advanced ones than us because of the Drake equation, and they probably came before us, so they're probably godlike. But that's so far away from us. Space is so vast, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson, that I don't actually have to deal with the fact that proves that we live in a system where super advanced, probably omnisufficient, if not omnipotent beings created or affected our creation.
I honestly
I would even argue
Vega, I can hear Vega. I know he's been waiting to say something.
I would even argue. I would argue that the likelihood that they're traveling from one of many infinite futures is almost more likely than traversing vast distances of physical space, especially if they can use frequency as a gross oversimplification as a space-time coordinate to map.
I would love to say that there are aliens out there, but I also don't think it's happened yet, because one of the things that people usually don't consider is that we are very, very early in the history of the universe right now. God himself is very young.
Time is an illusion.
The sun is only a third generation star. We're 13 billion years into the universe, and we've got enough fuel for 1 trillion years of stars.
So the only star you're worried about is Sol Invictus?
Life is only about half as old as the universe itself.
Are you seriously only worried about Sol Invictus? You know what I mean? Like, there's other stars out there.
But they could only be as old as the universe. That's only 13 billion years, and we've taken 4 billion years to evolve from
time.
But that estimate. Hold on a second. Yeah, that estimate is it's relative because time dilates around dense objects, so there's no way to truly age.
There's much more time in the future of the universe than there is in the past of the universe. Is what I'm saying. We're still not even a tenth of a percent into the beginning of how long there will be stars.
Which is why some things that took billions of years only took 7 days. Right?
Think about it. In a trillion years, when we're 1/1,000,000th of the way through the age of stars, there will be much more likely for beings to have interacted with other civilizations than
What about Valiant Thor? What about Valiant Thor?
I really think if there's life on other planets, it's much more likely for them to still be in a much earlier phase in our evolution than we are.
But it's also possible that they evolved on a planet that's close to such a massive star that time actually...
Oh, they shut him down. The CIA doesn't want you to say that.
Yeah.
The Time Lords claim.
Andrew got cut off. Try to say what you said one more time if you can. The last part there. Really? They really don't like that.
That time is physically traveling so much, like, relatively slower there that they're able to, like, evolve eons, and, they could do 1,000 years in R100 or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, so you got the Hyperborean Vril, and they have Dracos. Dracos are just mechanical beings that don't have the capacity for emotion, because you wouldn't want to... You would offload most of the hard labor onto machinery, just like they would, it seems like. But I wanted to ask if you're familiar with Valiant Thor. Are you familiar with Valiant Thor, the alien from Venus who helped the Pentagon during the Cold War? You know what I'm talking about? Valiant Thor? Valiant Thor was, I think there's like a Men in Black kind of thing about him, right? What do you think? Anybody?
Wasn't he this guy that claimed he showed up out of nowhere? He claimed to be like some otherworldly being, and a lot of serious people actually like believed him and like took him to see other really, really important people. And those things are always interesting because they always come out with some like uncanny knowledge that no person should really know, and that's like the spooky part.
Right. Yeah, associated with Project Blue Book. According to Doctor Strange, which is also kind of Doctor Strange is maybe the character Doctor Strangelove was based on. Talks about pyramids and on Mars and all the things that we started to talk about today, things that you're still taught in school about space. They seem to be ideas that are introduced by this Valiant Thor character who is speaking to the Pentagon. And there's another movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, talking about the essentiality of nuclear. What's it called? Nuclear annihilation. What's it called? Where both sides have
mutually assured destruction.
Mutually assured destruction, so that but either sides have nukes, and therefore neither side uses nukes, right? And this is his idea. Eventually, we'll have a super authority which is displaced from humans, some sort of a technocracy, which would destroy, and it creates basically a treaty between all people, so that war is impossible, right? Anytime a war were to be tried to start, you would immediately be destroyed, and that would just end that genetically. After a few generations, war would just be removed from the plausibility of human species.
Yeah, that's some weird utopianism.
I mean, it's utopia, dystopia. It's authoritarianism.
Being alive is war. You can't be alive without killing something. The only thing you can eat that wasn't alive is water and salt.
Right, but this idea that you could create treaties that would force states to, I mean, what is going on today? It's the nuclear treaties that protect the existence and identity of a state.
We could create a temporary peace, perhaps. It will.
What's the difference between Rhodesia and Zimbabwe, right? It's recognition by the international community. What's the difference between North Korea and, I don't know, Cambodia in the 60s, right? It's recognition by the international community, right? What is the difference in recognition? A nuclear arm.
No, I think whatever order we create will eventually break down. There's entropy in all places. So eventually it will end. Yeah, sure. We could create a temporary peace that might last many generations. Eventually that won't go away.
Yeah. I don't know, Post just says Kissinger, like all based like that. Get your camera working, Post, for the love of God.
Well, when it comes to otherworldly beings that I personally feel I've had contact with, it's the same that we all have contact with extra dimensional forces and stuff, but we just don't really look at them like that. Like, I want to go back to measuring IQ, right? This could be controversial, but what is like measuring IQ when you give someone an IQ test? It's their ability to spot patterns, right? And if you could spot patterns in more things than others, then you could see things that don't really exist in the material world.
Your prediction power is stronger if you have a higher IQ.
Now, here's the thing. Like, let's look at patterns themselves. Are patterns just what they are, or could they be intelligent? Could they be a life form? Patterns might actually be alive. You know, like
they don't need to be conscious for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Neoplatonic concepts might be alive. I 100% agree. More than we are alive, probably. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I mean, if I look at an entity or a life form like that, that's an alien to me.
I agree with you.
They're way more advanced than us, you know, but
I think that the aliens or the other beings that we're interacting with, I think we're very much alone in the universe, and maybe not totally alone. Maybe there are a few other planets out there that maybe have fungus or gunk. Maybe few have some sapient beings on them. But just because the universe itself is very young, that's why we are so alone, because we just haven't had time to develop yet. The spirits that we're dealing with have had nothing to do with living beings. These are the forces of nature that we are dealing with directly. Like the wanderers in the sky that the Babylonians looked up at and learned how to predict the seasons from, those were spirits, and they taught them math. Like, that's not, it doesn't have to be like a living, a conscious being.
You're right. It doesn't have, but it could be something greater. Like when I look at like a everyday life, it's like, okay, if you subscribe to the pattern of healthy eating, you know, like do the same thing every day, or like do a pattern of like, you know, meals like throughout your week, you're going to get certain blessings, or you're going to get curses. You know, if you're subscribed to the wrong patterns too, and they could really mess you up. And I think like when you think of like extra life forms and stuff, if there are more advanced than us, then clearly they have a better handle on patterns as like the fabric of the universe, as opposed to just like stuff we can observe with our senses.
Right. I think that
I totally agree. I got it bounced, guys. I don't mean to. This has been a really amazing conversation, and I hope to have one like this in the future with all of you.
Yeah, it's always great to have you, Andrew. Let's keep working on making the world a better place and getting black mold out of our hexane plants. God bless you, man. Take care.
Good luck with the black mold, man. That shit's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Cheers.
Based Vega. Oh wait, was he saying something? Wait, you
Oh,
got
no,
cut
just-
off. Last thing you
Just sea moss. I always make sure to take a bunch of sea moss in the morning.
Oh yeah. Everybody eats
I'll
sea
look that
moss.
up.
Yeah. All right. Love you, bro.
So I wanted to, if you guys want to circle back to the aliens,
Please do, because I actually got the picture of the Antarctica pyramid ready. So yeah, we're ready to go. Yeah.
So
go
there's
there.
a couple of interesting pieces of evidence I've seen for alien life on Earth, which are they're not conclusive, but there's a crazy bacteria they found, I think somewhere in Michigan, or maybe not bacteria, but some kind of single-celled organism that it has DNA, where you know the 4 building blocks of DNA, like the A, C, D, G. One of those molecules is different in it. It has similar DNA
Uracil?
structures, but it's just like it just shows you that there's a living thing on this planet which has DNA which is built out of different building blocks than every single other living thing, and it lives in like a lake of arsenic in a cave or something like that.
Right.
So
Yeah, I've seen some examples of that in Bolivia as well, where there have been like sulfuric 13,000 degree vaporous geysers,
Demons.
which kills everything else. Well, I also pulled up that picture of eudaimonia earlier. The idea of a good diamond is not necessarily the same as the Christians are just like against all demons for apparently, and except for King James, and I think a lot of Christians are actually secretly for demons. Let's be honest. But the eudaimonia, the idea that there are good demons, that idea of good parasites, good probiotics, good gut fauna, etc. But extremophiles, they like to thrive in places that other things die off. So if the sulfuric geyser kills everything else and then something is left alone, it might evolve and survive and thrive without anything killing it, right? All it has to do is survive sulfuric gas at 13,000 degrees.
It's actually really funny. Those extremophiles tend to be something called archaeans, which are totally separate from pretty much everything else on the tree of life. And something that's really unique to that branch is that there are no pathogenic archaeans. There are bacteria, there are fungus, there are even animals and plants that infect other life forms, that kill and eat other life forms. Archaeans tend to almost all take their energy from like chemical sources or light sources. They don't parasitize or infect anything else. It's very weird.
Like photosynthesis.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also
more of a bacterial thing, but yeah, they're more like the peaceful organisms. They're like the passive ones. It's very, very, very zen.
There's also someone found a meteorite that had THC on it, which is mind blowing. like
heavy
somewhere
metal
in space, THC exists.
Do you know where I could find that?
I read about it on Wikipedia a couple of years ago.
Man, I want to see this. That sounds rad.
Yeah, THC meteorite.
Yeah, it was probably sorted out some demon's nose, like it's out of space.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the fact that we have natural cannabinoids in our biology, I mean, there's just too many things that are strange. It would make plenty of sense to me that somehow that's possible. I don't know the evidence, but
yeah, I mean, it could just be, a freak accident. But if you guys have also heard, there's recently this guy that found a whole bunch of little metallic spheroids at the bottom of the ocean after.
Yeah, what is that? What was that about?
I looked into it a little bit, and there's a belief that it's literally like a map of the solar system.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
We'll go back.
So it's like these little titanium iron composite balls that represent the planet, and it's some crazy shit.
Right. Yeah, there's some crazy things here.
And then the guy who published it, like, he's not a conspiracy theorist or anything. He was like a well-respected scientist, and I don't know.
It would be funny if they just happened to match the ratios of the planets, and it was just like ballast fill for the spacecraft to make it balanced, right? Yeah. And the balls just happened to be like the same ratio of the planets, and we just looked into that way too deeply. It was literally.
I don't know if you guys have followed.
Fuel tank full on one side, and it didn't fly crooked when he hit the thruster.
Avi Loeb has done some interesting stuff though, talking about essentially like he hasn't called it an alien civilization, but he has essentially backed up this idea that in Antarctica there is some sort of a super civilization, something that's a para-civilization to our own, and perhaps already hit singularity. I think that's basically what we're talking about. It's this idea that there's something there that doesn't want to interfere with us because it's made from us, but it's outside of time, which is what the Mayan calendar talked about. It said after 2012, it's not the end of the world, it's the end of linearity, right? So maybe we're just dealing with something that's beyond linear.
Well, I do believe that, because the truth is, like, time isn't, our access to our own timelines isn't as linear as we think it is. We can make contact with our past and future selves. You literally can write yourself a letter, and you literally can forgive your past self for their mistakes. You know, it might be one-sided at first, but if you mechanically keep doing that over time, that bond gets stronger, that you become less linear as a being, and like less stuck in one point in time, and you become more consciously in contact with different yous, you know, you in the past or you in different futures. And the more you tap into that, those are, to me, in my opinion, that's your most powerful spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual guides. It's future you. You know, if you're so in tune with your own actions and your own causes and your own effects, you're going to be able to be in a better communication with your future self, make better decisions. You're going to be on the same side, and you're going to be way more powerful than people who are just constantly reacting to like present moment stimulus, you know? So that alone, if collectively the entire species, if all of humanity does that, then yeah, that is starting to break down some serious barriers. You know, first we have to break down.
Theory, isn't it?
You guys remember when Buzz Aldrin was evacuated? Buzz Aldrin was evacuated from Antarctica after he fell. And I thought this was a fascinating story also. And you remember the Fitbit Antarctica story. There was the map of the secrets of the Fitbit training. Where Antarctica map.
Fitbits right worked in Antarctica?
Yeah, this was pretty great. The Fitbit map. Here it is right here. Secret government base found under Antarctica, because they are all wearing Fitbits, and so they could just see where they were at. Like, here they are right here. Here's the size of the base.
Leak the data or something?
There was like, and there was like 10,000 Fitbits that were being used underground.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Well, I hope they're American.
So that's fun.
Well, yeah, I mean that's probably what it is. They're probably just a bunch of people like working or stationed there, or like, yeah.
So I had a buddy who used to have to go to McMurdo to do pickup and to drop off from the U.S. Army, like, because you know they have to dump out their trash, have to ferry freight in and out their trash. And he was saying that one of the weirdest things about it was the amount of condoms that they were both bringing in and out. It was like they were bringing in just like thousands of condoms that had been used, and then they were replaced like in these giant like landfill-sized dump containers.
Just I feel like they would be able to repurpose those into fuel.
You'd think, right? No, but there's something strange about that for sure. That I always thought, well, leftists from Santa Cruz going to McMurdo base, we're probably going to get down. But there's also more to that. The idea that they're having crazy sex parties at McMurdo seems kind of maybe related to the singularity, right? If you get a singularity and an orgy, do sound like the same idea, I think.
Yeah.
But like, have you guys looked into like the origin of fungi, where fungi comes from?
Oh, Paisla
yeah, it split off from Zoa way after plants.
Are you like a Paul Stamets panspermian? What do you mean by that? What are you saying, Dan?
I'm a lot less educated on this stuff than you guys. I really mostly study like physics and engineering.
I was about to say dubious. You're like a rather humble fellow, but like I remember you being quite astute. But yeah, so what is your thought on the Opaisla
what really blows my mind is like petrified wood. If you know about, you know, the whole planet was covered in just plant matter, and it was piling up because there was nothing that would consume it. And then at some point, fungus just shows up and breaks all of it down. And now, you know, fungus is a huge part of the animal kingdom. And it's just mind blowing to me that this thing just showed up out of nowhere to an environment that was full of food for it. And I think that could be a potential theory for, you know, alien life too. Like maybe fungus is alien life.
We're going to have to get you deep into the Bach saga so you can study the Yggdrasil Axis Mundi and see what you think about the idea that the mesas were not necessarily trees, but actually the mycelium Opaisla structures themselves. These might have been from mushrooms that are excreting mineral.
Have you seen stromatolites? They're actually lumps. They're like living rocks made out of bacterial mats that keep taking on mineral coatings.
I think my dad has a few of these actually downstairs. Yeah,
these are like some of the oldest fossils that people have found. Like there's still new ones forming today.
Well, that's literally a pet rock.
But it's older than fungus, even, right?
Oh, that's
Well-
much older than fungus. Yeah, this predates all eukaryotes.
Well, you guys, we have about 2 more minutes. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we say or cover in the last 120 seconds here?
No, it's been a pleasure.
That time travel isn't time travel when you cross over to another universe in multiverse. I'm not sure if that's quite the right phrasing, but because you have every reality is in the same timeline or not. If they're not in the same timeline, then you just go over to another multiverse that's like 20 years ahead, and then you jump back, and obviously you've gone. You know 20 years in the future what's going to happen, but not exactly, because
I think you're mostly right, but there's probably multiple levels to it. So I think fifth dimensional beings emerge, and that humans might have started out as third dimensional or maybe fourth dimensional experiences. And so the idea of the difference between you in the past and you in the future, without memory, without history, that's really difficult to connect the two things. So having that awareness, you could probably have stacks of awareness. And so if you have a lack of that stack of awareness, and you have multiple verses of reality, but if you were aware of multiple realities at once, then really that would be what we're talking about when we say that you're able to change the timeline. So I think also, like Chardin talks about the omega point. I think the omega point is an important concept. I don't know if this is gonna let me even open the page. Those bastards. Let's go here to omega point new sphere.
It's like alternate realities. I think it's explained in like Star Trek.
I think that we might.
Alternate reality.
You might experience alternative realities on a lower level of consciousness, but if you became a higher stacked awareness of consciousness, then you would be aware of the entire noosphere. And so the noosphere would include multiple biospheres, right? Multiple atmospheres or ambience that you could experience. So the connection between the universe where you are poor and the universe where you are rich, that's where you start to expand multiversality, but still there's an idea of the omega point. And so the omega point is a singularity that is the most ideal ending for the multiverse. That is a singular point, right? So we have from the alpha point to ultimate consciousness, but ultimate consciousness is still, you can imagine in Donnie Darko, the universe ends, right? And there's all these apocalypses that happen, everyone's life ends. That's not the omega point.
It's New Genesis.
The omega point is the culmination of the ultimate timeline to the very end of the timeline. And we could say that it's eternal and it's immortal and it exists forever, but most religious ideas are that time is alpha to omega, and that this creation exists with the creator outside of the creation. So outside of the alpha to the omega. So omega being this perfect timeline, which is not what the multiverse is. Like the multiverse is many different things. But if you think about it, most multiverses wouldn't work out because let's say you had, less density as one of the rules for this multiverse. Well, then they would just shatter everything. So there's just certain things, like Sean was saying, there's certain things that make sense. There's certain things that work. There's certain, like, you're more likely to find similarities and parity, find other realities where the same style worlds have been created, where the same kinds of people exist, where just about identical to you are happening now or in the future or the past, because that's just a probabilistic path.
All right.
Well, okay.
Thanks, Professor.
What?
Thank you, Professor.
Oh my God, Andreas.
Always concurrent.
Vileplume was the laziest sprite in Gen 1. You're wrong.
All right. Well, early birds, I love you guys. Daniel, do you have any thoughts? Chris, do you have any? You like to say I love you to people and follow your dreams.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I just say stay aligned in mind, body, and soul. That's it.
That's the same idea.
Yeah.
It's now like 10:30 in California, which is not early in New York, not early in England.
No.
But in California, it's pretty early right now. So
Are you in Cali right now?
yeah, I'm like, people are just waking up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah, California people time.
Oh, I saw a picture of Diana earlier. And Diana, you're already pretty, but I saw a picture of you in high school. Dang, girl, it's a good thing I'm a time traveler because I'm gonna come back and buy you ice cream. You're looking great. Love you all.